What are the right ways and wrong ways to introduce a main character?
I said earlier that, backstory isn't always story. So if you are slavishly devoted to spelling out everything that's happened to a person up to the point that you meet them for the first time, it's a huge drag. It's like you've saddled them with a weight that is so heavy, like the explanation of themselves, that you can't just invest in whatever moment you're introduced to them in. Like if you watch a Bond film and you've never seen a James Bond film before, and the first shot you see is this guy jumping out of a helicopter on a parachute, and they were like, I bet you're wondering how I got here. Well, my name is James, and I went to school here, and this happened, and then one day somebody came up to me and said, do you want to be in a high school program for secret agent wannabes? And I said, sure. And it was okay, but it took a long time, and I wasn't really good with a gun at first, but now I'm amazing, and I have a license to kill. And then the parachute comes back down. You would hate that. So this whole thing about backstory and knowing everything about somebody before you see them is not a great way to introduce a character. Introducing a character during a moment in which they are vulnerable is immediately engaging. Look at movies like Diary of a Wimpy Kid. I'm trying to think of an example that I would give you myself, but I don't have one that immediately comes to mind. I'm 47 shows and several hundred episodes in. I don't remember them all. Sometimes I watch TV and I go, oh, I forgot I worked on that. It's very rare, but it does happen. Thanks for reruns of shows I did 15 years ago that somebody said, we'll never be able to re-air it because there's no aftermarket for reality shows. And that's why you can't have portable pension and health through the Writers Guild, because we don't want to pay for something we can only air one time. Then they run a marathon of it every Saturday for a year and a half. But I'll keep my personal wounds out of this because that's all backstory.
What is a character's flaw, and why is it important for us to know that in the story?
A character flaw often is something to help you as the viewer identify with a character. That's why we have them. I'm not perfect, so I don't want to watch people who are perfect. When you watch movies like Clueless, or you watch movies like Mean Girls, you get to see what's wrong with every character. And the other thing the character flaw does is it allows you to project onto them imperfect people that you already know in your life. And you go, oh, that's like so-and-so. That's like the person who used to talk about me all the time in high school, and I always wished something would happen to them. Somebody would confiscate their burn book. It's real. Character flaws make characters identifiable to the layman who are watching the film.
What if somebody's too flawed in a movie?
If they're too flawed in the movie to a point where I can't root for them, that is a problem. And I'm trying to think of a good example. If you watch a movie where somebody is so relentlessly crap at everything they do, you're not excited for them. You don't root for them anymore. Like Clouseau. The thing in the Pink Panther films that works with him is he is a bumbling idiot, but he has regard for himself and he wants to be seen as very successful, that we can all identify with, and that overtakes the flaw. So you realize that this is a person who can fail. If you don't think someone can fail, you can't identify with them, and there are no stakes in place for them during that film. As a person who is nothing but a string of successes, what a snooze. Like, even in a Bond film, every once in a while, somebody gets away on their little glider or whatever, and you're like, well, he's going to get him the next time. He's not going to get him this time. He's escaped, so now we've got 3 more movies to watch to see if he ever gets to that guy.
What's your favorite flawed character?
Oh, man. There are so many. I think Peter Sellers as Clouseau is pretty good. Chance the Gardener, who in Being There, who also is played by Peter Sellers, is a flawed character who is just not particularly mentally with it. And he keeps stumbling through these situations that he somehow not only survives, but turns to his own benefit without really trying. It's a lot of outside forces on the character, which is also something I don't normally like. But he's so likable as someone who is just trying to get through and be emotionally sensitive and involved with the people around him. that kind of wipes away everything. I think you just identify him because you know what it's like to be in a situation where you can't control what's happening, so you can still identify with him even though he's not mentally very with it.
Why is it important for the main character to have transformation?
Because if nothing changes, what did you just watch? How can you not be affected by an hour and a half or 2 hours worth of things happening to you? Transformation is important because we also, we ourselves, hopefully, as life progresses, I am not the same person I was at 10. Thank God. What a nervous little runt I was, wanting to be somebody notable. No 12-year-old should be talking to his friends about his legacy. Like, what am I leaving behind? What will people remember me for? And who cares? I did, but I mean, like, that was a pretty big flaw. Like, I'm not a big fan of younger me. Younger me was afraid of everything because everything I did was an opportunity for me to humiliate myself in front of my peers. I wanted to be a cartoonist or a comic book artist, which nobody I knew wanted to be or wanted to do. And because it was a different interest, I couldn't find common ground with them on it. So I was just the weirdo who was always drawing in class, who in middle school was having his drawings stuck on the wall in the back of the classroom by my homeroom teacher, like I was 5. It was just a very strange place to be.
What are the biggest mistakes you see writers make with their main characters?
They don't think about them, or they are trying to write to an archetype. That they're not creating a fully rounded character. They're creating a hero that could be interchangeable with any other hero from any other film.
What are some of these archetypes?
Well, the superhero, the secret agent, the ones that seem to be basically the same in every movie. These infallible folks, or somebody who's completely based on another character. And that happens a lot. Like, I remember when Tarantino movies first became a big thing, I read a lot of screenplays that my friends had worked on that were just these very long, talky things. And just the most important thing was that somebody said, every 5 minutes, or 3 minutes, or 2 minutes, or 30 seconds. And they were just trying to emulate what they had seen other writers write. The main characters weren't individual. They weren't personal to the writer. They weren't identifiable as actual people. They're toys that are being made to follow a routine for this purpose of writing a screenplay that feels like something else that someone else had seen.
Do you think that was just a trend, the way, people try to emulate found footage horror films?
People do it all the time. I mean, anything that's successful becomes the thing that you try to emulate. And I remember when I was younger, I was trying to write Woody Allen movies. And every character I had was some poor, schlubby little underdog that was with somebody who was way too pretty for them and was always worried that his world was going to collapse at any minute because the pretty girl was going to figure out that he was nobody. That was a lot of my own insecurity because, like, Woody Allen films were very close to me when I was younger because I just was so into, at a very young age, it was like, this is what life is really like for most people. This is a guy who's successful on a certain level, but he never thinks that he's ever won. He's not necessarily an underdog all the time, but he is also not a particularly confident lead. And I liked that because I didn't feel like I was hot stuff when I started writing.
Do you think that he was the voice for what most people think, but they just didn't want to give the appearance that they didn't have it figured out and that they...
Yeah. And there's that great moment in Annie Hall where he's standing in line for a movie and some bloviating jerk is talking about the film. And he says, oh, well, I don't think you're right on. And he says, oh, well, let's ask Marshall McLuhan. And he pulls in like one of the greatest media scholars in the history of time to debate this guy in the lobby of a movie theater about, was it Triumph of the Will? Was the movie that he had dragged her to go see?
Forgotten, sorry, it's been a long
Taking
time.
him to see some Leni Riefenstahl film, and this guy was talking about just pulling stuff out of nowhere, trying to make himself sound educated, and he just pulled this guy over. He's like, well, let's ask Marshall McLuhan about that. I don't think half of the people that watched the movie knew who Marshall McLuhan was. But it's, It's fun. It's a little Easter egg for intellectuals to be like, oh, cool.